All right, so everybody go get yourself that fresh cup of coffee. It's early in the morning. Hopefully, you're listening to this when it's released at 6 a.m. And kick your feet up and let's go. Well, welcome back to Sunday Morning Coffee. My name is Isaac the Boot Guy from YouTube. Online boot reviews for men's work boots, outdoor boots, and outdoor and work clothing. So everybody's asking me about last week's show and why I would put together something so left field from my regular boot world reviews and all that stuff that I do like that. And my best answer is that I'm a pretty vast person. I've got a lot of interests in this world. I'm just not a very narrow-minded person. I kind of give everything a fair shake at a stick. And I realized that whole show might have thrown people for a curve and a loop, that I'm trying these different things in this audio spectrum and this visual spectrum. So when you watch the video and you listen to it at the same time with the headphones, that these two things coalesce together. I think I said that correctly. Well, that's just what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to put things together that work. But I promise you, this show is going to be nothing like that. I do have a couple updates though from last week, from doing the preparation for that show. Now, I'm not going to use the word research because as somebody who actually believes in the scientific method, reading stuff online and spending copious amounts of time reading things online, though it might be classified in the broadest stroke of the word of research. You might say that is research. I'm researching this, I'm researching that. That is not research to me in the scientific method, in the true meaning of the scientific method. I prefer to say that I was prepping, that I was just reading a bunch of stuff online. Using the word research, not my deal. So, as I was prepping for last week's show, I mentioned that my YouTube's sidebar, which is an algorithmic-driven function of YouTube, which is, as the boot guy, I am trying my damnedest to make sure that I am showing up in that sidebar when anybody ever looks at anything that's work-related. Now, I guess if I should start doing some reviews on routers and drills and Lie-Nielsen planes, okay, maybe then I might be getting a little bit more traction. And you know what? That stuff might not be a bad idea. There's no reason that I need to do those reviews. I can go have professional people tell me about their tools and why their tools are great, which would be phenomenal. But regardless, so in the spectrum of doing all this prep work, I watched a lot of videos, read Wikipedia, of course. I mean, how can you not spend the day? I mean, Wikipedia is like one of the best rabbit holes to start crawling down. And the fact that within Wikipedia, there's hyperlinks. And even if you're looking up stupid stuff, most of the time I use Wikipedia for chemistry and stuff that's based in the physics realm, material science realm. So I use Wikipedia for that. When I'm looking up materials and I'm trying to get the chemical compounds on them, trying to understand how these two polymers could work together, I use Wikipedia for that instead of just going to University of Michigan or Caltech or any of the other places that I would normally use their sites and their information for. I use Wikipedia, and I love it because there's just so much. I mean, authors, you start reading about why some author wrote something, and they like a reference to somebody else, and all of a sudden you're on this rabbit hole. Just like this conversation, I've gone off on a tangent in a rabbit hole. But back to my YouTube stream. So, because of all the craziness of looking up Alex Jones and Billy Myers and Anton LaVey and all that, I started getting more and more conspiracy stuff. And I've been a subscriber to Vice the news source, for since Vice was gym shoe reviews and hip hop stuff and street art and stuff like that. Hold on, I need a sip of coffee. Let's take a second here and let me clear up my voice a little bit. So in the stream, Vice released on April 12, 2018, they released a short little piece, I think it was a 15-minute piece, and it's titled "The Rise of the Crisis Actor Conspiracy Movement." And it just sparked I'm sitting down to have lunch. I made myself this was on Wednesday. I made myself this amazing ham sandwich. I mean, it was on rye bread, dark European rye bread, lettuce, enough mayo to drown a horse in, 2 different types of mustard, a little bit of spinach, and a huge slice of tomato, Romano tomato, sliced parallel so it sits really nice. I mean, I had this monster of a sandwich. So it was hard for me to focus on the video that was being played from Vice because, the sandwich was just out of this world. But I did it. Now, as I was looking up stuff on Alex Jones, I did come across his denial of the Sandy Hook massacre. And I watched that stuff, and it's ridiculous, it's deplorable, it's disgusting, of course, all that. 2, it's amazing how bad behavior just gives birth to more bad behavior. So what is happening now is people are grabbing onto this idea of the crisis actor. People are watching CNN, people are watching Fox. They are glued to, they're TiVoing the news, basically. And they're glued to watching the reports on all the stations at one time about one event. So usually it's when something horrible happens, school shootings and stuff like that. And they're watching this. And what they do is they then find the parts where the reporter interviews the same person time and time again, and they start pulling out what they're saying, and they're listening for scripted words and just things like that. It's just, and then they try to tie the knots together. That whole conspiratorial way of thinking, they try putting these knots together. So what this little Vice report's about is about this goofball called Cy Thorne. He's a conspiracy theorist from Texas. Him and his wife, what the hell was... His wife had some stupid fucking name. Sorry for the profanity. Actually, I'm not sorry for profanity. We're all grown-ups here. Granny, Conspiracy Granny, or Truth Granny, or something like that. I'll have a link below so you can actually watch this. But it's disgusting. And so I want to tie this together with something else. And what the thing is that, so this guy, he's a Cy Thorne conspiracy guy. He's like 10 years my senior. He's probably 55 years old, so he's like 10 years older than me. And to see this guy, so I'm only basing this off of like a 12 minutes. Not even that. I didn't even bother watching any of his videos just because I really don't care. But at the same time, I want to know just so I'm not left in the dark. I'm not saying he's got some sort of narrative that is going to change my life. But before I can fully find somebody to be an asshole or an idiot, I like to know as much about them as possible. Like when somebody leaves me a bad comment on my comment section in YouTube, okay, I'll figure out who you are. I'll see what you're doing. I'll troll you a little bit so I know whether or not you're just out there doing that. Most of the time when guys tell me to stop shaking a boot, stop shaking a boot, and I look at the stuff they watch, it's like, okay, I know that you might be a subscriber, but you're not a real fan of what I'm doing. Like, you're just seeing that section. You're not watching the video to the end. You're not seeing the front parts. You're not understanding the amount of work that goes into each one of these videos, because you've probably never, not you guys, but these assholes, they never stood in front of a camera and tried to produce something with actual production understanding light, understanding sound, understanding how depth of field works within a lens. None of that. They just think you stand in front of the camera, you switch your camera to automatic, and you start talking. Well, there's a lot more to it. But the thing is this. Okay, so with these conspiracy nuts, with this guy and his wife, and them denying the massacre, this whole thing is about them denying the massacre in, I believe was it Parkland, Florida. I believe that's where what they were talking about. There's two different guys at the interview, but no, these two were in Texas. I believe they were Texas. I think I can recall their accents, and I don't want to put any more sound bites into anything, or just I'm going to put music in the background and stuff like that, but no more sound bites. I find the sound bites, one, they got me completely demonetized for copyright infringement for using sound bites, and two, they're a little distracting. I mean, if I can't come across with my own point talking, then yeah, the sound bites are distracting. So I'll put in music, I'll put in emphasis with, some of the sound equipment that I have, and we'll play it like that. But back to this. So these conspiracy nuts. Now, I brought up his age because he's so close to my own age, and it just seems like he's new to the idea of the net, to how the net works. Now, if you've been online for several years, and several being, let's see, I've got my first computer 30 years ago. So I've been online since it was green screen, and we used to chat back and forth by dial-up and putting our phones into modems. So I've been online for a while. So this is nothing new. The idea of conspiracy theories existing on the net is nothing new in my world. But if you bought your first smartphone, let's say 10 years ago, and you really fought using that smartphone as a Luddite for a while, and all of a sudden you discovered a stream of information that kind of spoke to you, and that's the danger of this conspiracy stuff, is that people who've only thought about the moon hoax, the moon landing, and then all of a sudden they run across a video that's about that, and they're like, it's not from CNN, and this guy's telling me he's the truth. That automatically reprograms your ability to understand the truth. And all of that is part of psychology and part of that whole, there's a whole section of thought that goes behind that, and let's not get into that. I bring up the age of the guy who's this side thorn conspiracy theorist guy from Texas because I also watched all of the CNN reports on Mark Zuckerberg being interviewed. And I have to say about that, him being interviewed by Congress. Now, Zuckerberg's a really smart, swift guy. I mean, a lot of people don't give him credit. And I'm not saying that Facebook is this great invention. Facebook is awesome. I mean, the idea of tying together all of the world's intellect into one place, that's outstanding. And just community, building friends, a small little Facebook story. So a family member of mine who served in Germany in the late 50s, he had a bunch of friends that served with him too, also in Germany. And he never saw these people after he left the service. And though he went to all the VFW meetings and all the local naval and army meetings, he never saw the guys that he hung out with, the guys that he slept in the barracks with, the guys that he went out and drank with and ate with, and when they had leave that he went off and crashed cars into trees, did all the stuff you do when you're young and you're stationed somewhere, right? So when somebody told him at one of the VFW meetings about Facebook, he came to me and I introduced him to Facebook and I showed him how to move around. And then it was one of the first things we started to look up were his buddies from the service. And now today, these three guys get together twice a year to go fishing in the closest point. One's in California, one's in Florida, one's in Chicago. And they meet in the middle and go fishing for a week. And it's not so much that these guys are hanging out fishing, but they shared a time and experience in life. And now they get to reconnect with that in a way that you really can't, it can't happen. And that is one of the beautiful aspects of Facebook is it's a visual and it's an instantaneous phone book to put people back together. At the same time, it's a great source to manipulate people into thinking that UFOs are real, correct? I mean, that's part of the whole, there's good and there's bad to everything in this world. So Zuckerberg's being interviewed by Congress. And I have to say that I lost my faith in our political system watching these testimonies. I don't know what it was. I mean, this is going to be complete ageism. And now most of the time when somebody asks me a question face to face, in person, in my presence, I like to give them all my attention, because if you're taking the time to actually ask me a question, I want to take the time to actually compile an answer that answers the question, if it's a question that is directed at me. So, okay, let's take 1 minute break. All right, so I just went and got a fresh cup of this dark roast that my wife picked up for me, and it is absolutely outstanding. I mean, it is like drinking pure dirt, bitter mud. It is delicious. It's what makes coffee awesome. So back to Zuckerberg and Congress. So if you haven't watched the questioning of Zuckerberg before Congress, there's all kinds of Cliff Note type edits that exist out there of him being asked these questions by Congress. But the thing that really stands out here, and why I brought up the ageism on the conspiracy guy and why the ageism of Congress needs to come up, is just something I want to make. I want to try and make these points as relevant as possible to everybody. And what that is most of you guys listening to me right now are extremely proficient in your trade. Now, you could be plumbers, you could be iron workers, you could be carpenters, cabinet makers, HVAC techs. They spread the gamut. Electricians. I mean, you guys are proficient in your trade. Now, there are parts of your trade where the tool that allows you to do your job, and you have multiple tools, are so complex to the average person that if you were to sit down and try and teach somebody, now let's just say a meter, say you're HVAC guy and you're trying to teach somebody how to use your meter, your basic electrical meter that allows you to know whether or not something's getting power. Most people have no clue, don't know what the heck that thing is. And it would really take some time in order to explain amplitude and ohmage to somebody if they've never experienced it firsthand. If you're a woodworker, if you're a cabinet maker, and you have to explain grain direction and how to cut a piece of wood, like, we take for granted just what we know when we're proficient in our trades. And people then who are placed in authority, and this is where this whole thing comes together. Congress is placed in a sense, in an authoritative sense to us. They're supposed to be, I'm putting air quotes up right now, in charge of us as a community, creating and doing and everything that Congress does, protecting us, the people, from ourselves, basically, right? So when they have hearings like this, and you can go back and you can, when they had the hearings for Hoffa and they had the hearings for, come on, pull it out of there. You guys are yelling them right now. I know you're yelling out who Congress did all these things. You know, all the people in the 50s, the FBI. Oh man, what the heck is his name? You know, I should be using the internet for this, right? But I'm not. Okay, you guys know who I'm talking about. So this is nothing new. Congress does this. They televise these hearings. They write about these hearings and whatnot. So just to listen to Congress, these older people who here at the same time, these are people that are my age. These are people that are 5 years my senior, 10 years my senior, 15 years my senior. They all have been in the same world that we all exist in. And to hear them asking Zuckerberg questions about how Facebook works, as if it's this fantasy of, I don't know. It's insane. I can't even put it into words how stupid these questions are. The questions that they're asking him. If you're proficient in back-end internet workings, if you understand SEO, if you understand coding, if you understand how computers work and how the internet works and how things work together with algorithms and just the yes and no basics of computer science, the questions that are being asked of him through Congress are idiotic. They are like completely just nonsensical at times. And I realize that not all of them are like that, but the ones that are remind me that the people of Congress are elected by us, the people. Why are we electing people who can't even hire people around them to write good questions for them, to put questions together that would be meaningful? And it's like, I mean, I'm sure everybody has done this before, where when you were younger that you had to prep for a test and you could study all weekend long. You could study all week long because you knew you were having this quote unquote, air quotes again, big test. And you would get ready for it so that when that test was in front of you, you could just breeze right through it. You could ace it. And then there was some of us who just kind of said, I'm going to walk in and see what happens. I feel that's what Congress did. I feel that they got some bullet points from somebody and they just kind of tried to put together the bullet points to make a semi-intellectual, cohesive question to Zuckerberg. And Mark does a great job of just looking him. He plays the great straight man. I mean, we could pair Mark Zuckerberg up with a real flamboyant figure and we would have a great comedy team. Just how straight he is, and just by him saying, I don't understand your question. I mean, if that didn't make Congress feel like idiots, that they can't even ask a question of a person. And people are going to argue that Zuckerberg is just being particular. But I think I listened to the questions. I gave it my full attention, and I have to say, they were bad. real bad. All right, so I mean, I really did have a whole show that I had prepped for this week. We'll just wait till next week. I mean, I'm sorry, I just basically just did updates on last week's show and talked about a few things. I mean, was not my intention, but you know, guys, sometimes you just need to ramble, and sometimes you just need to say things that are kind of in the moment. So let's talk about how this podcast should work and what you think would be some good ideas for this podcast. So please comment below. If you've got an idea, if you think that what I've built through the Boot Guy reviews, if you can think of something that would really be entertaining to all of us, you got to remember that what I've put together with this YouTube channel and my website and just my Instagram is I've kind of put together all of us who are interested in footwear for work. But it's the idea of this tool that we all have to use every single day that goes on our feet that we don't want to think about, that it's there and we want to forget about it. And on the casual realm of it all, I mean, who doesn't love putting on a pair of $500 alligator boots, right? Who doesn't love that? I mean, I said that like a real pompous asshole. I mean, as I'm getting into my Bentley. Who doesn't love alligator boots? But if you've got some ideas on things you would like to hear on the podcast or see videos being made, you got to understand that whole vlogging thing, going out and talking about, I don't find that entertaining. I find information entertaining, and I find premeditated film entertaining. Reality TV, I never found it entertaining. So it's really hard for me to pull that stuff off. It's really hard for me to go out there and do something that I'm just not passionate about. Now, if I was creating narratives, if I was doing back-end work with, a film crew and actually putting together a story or a documentary, different story altogether. Documentaries are definitely something that I could do because there's a serious vein to it. Now, me and my wife are actually planning this year a trip to Thorogood. We're putting together dates. We're trying to make sure that everything on our end is ready to go because we're not the type that takes vacations. We don't need to run away from our lives and say, oh God, I need a vacation. I need to get away. The stresses. We've built our lives so that everything that goes on in our lives is intentional. Now, from time to time, shit happens, like we get a flat tire or we run out of coffee. And, of course, we fucking run out of coffee. The whole world breaks loose, right? Shit. Can you imagine that? Sunday morning, you wake up and there's no coffee? Heads are going to roll. So we're planning that. But if there's something that you guys, I have an extensive amount of friends in the work world. I have an extensive amount of people that I deal with on a daily basis. If you guys think it would be a great idea to hear a podcast interview with somebody from the footwear industry, comment below. Let me know. If you think, I don't know, let's just say the guy that owns Nick Boots right now, Grant, I think his name is. I went back and forth with him for a while. Maybe I could talk him into telling us a little bit more of the insight to Nick's boots over the phone. The guys at Thorogood, maybe I could talk them into doing something like this with me. The Altai boot guys, I mean, Condor, all of these guys who are on the production end of the merchandise. Even the salesman at some point could give us some insight into the world of the products that we all use. Now, if this is a good idea, hey, comment below. Let me know. If there's a company that you guys would really be interested in knowing more about, like the guys from 1620, they seem like some really interesting dudes. And does anybody care if they're interesting dudes? Does anybody care about their philosophy? That's really up to you guys to tell me. I can do the legwork. I can put it all together, but I don't want it to feel like there's a guy that my nephews, nieces, and Logan Paul, or any of those fuckheads on YouTube that feel the need to show off their big houses and stuff and remind us all that we're working stiffs and we're just trying to get by. So I would sooner do something with a little bit more quality and quantity behind it in order to make it interesting. So if there's something, please comment below. Let me know. Also, if you own a small business and you want to just plug your small business, if you're whatever type of business you're doing. The guys who called me last week and left voice messages and voicemail, guys, like I said, I'm trying not to use any sound bites. So you can still call me. But if you got a small business, instead of me taking a 1.5-minute break to go get a cup of coffee in the middle of the podcast, I would love if you guys, wanted to call me up and just tell me about your small business, and I could filter that into the podcast or anywhere, just so that it's, we're helping each other. One hand washes the other. You guys can call me, I can call you. And the other thing too, if you guys got a small business and you want to promote your small business and you've printed up t-shirts for the guys, send me a t-shirt, and so I can stop wearing. Everybody knows that I'm the Boot Guy Reviews. I can stop wearing my own t-shirts, and if you guys want, I can start pushing that out there too. Remember, this isn't like a sponsorship. I'm not going to hit you up for money, but if you want to send me some free t-shirts, it's summertime. I'm going to need some t-shirts, whether you guys send them to me or if I go and I start buying Blackhawks and Cubs and Bulls t-shirts again, which I don't want to do. I'd sooner wear something that's meaningful to somebody than something that just helps a bunch of crybabies make $1 million for hitting a ball. So that's another thing, guys. Okay, so like I said, I had a whole show prepped for the love of work, kind of talking about work and why we love it and why work is necessary and it's survival based, and then it's enjoyment and just all this stuff that revolves around work. But you know what? A tangent is good from time to time. So, hey, this has been Sunday Morning Coffee. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for commenting, and thank you so much for just joining the community of the Boot Guy Reviews. And I'll see you next week. We'll talk about something serious, and if anybody can come up with anything in the comments below, I'll see what I can do. I'll try to throw it together. I'll try to make the best possible show I can. All right. Talk to you soon. Have a wonderful week. Everybody be safe. I hope the weather's good, and I hope everybody can get out and do something fun.